The train rattled to a stop in Carlin, Nevada, and Florence Bennett pressed her face against the dusty window, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched cowboys and miners move through the small station like shadows in the afternoon sun. She clutched the letter in her gloved hand, the one from Aaron Fletcher, the rancher who needed a wife and had promised her a home, though his words had been spare and practical, nothing like the romantic declarations she had read about in books. You getting off or staying aboard? The conductor's gruff voice startled her from her thoughts. Florence stood quickly, smoothing down her plain gray traveling dress, the same one her sister Margaret had sneered at before she left Philadelphia. "You will never catch a man's eye looking like that," Margaret had said, gesturing at Florence's simple clothes and straight brown hair pulled back in a sensible bun. "You are too plain, too quiet, too ordinary. That rancher will take one look at you and send you right back on the next train." Those words had echoed in Florence's mind for the entire journey west, each mile adding weight to her worry. At 22 years old, she knew she was not a beauty. Her face was ordinary, her features unremarkable, her figure neither curvy nor graceful. She had accepted the mail-order bride arrangement because no man in Philadelphia had ever looked at her twice, and because staying with her cruel sister and her husband had become unbearable after their parents passed. The platform was rough wooden planks that creaked under her feet as she stepped down, her single trunk being hauled behind her by a young porter. The Nevada sun beat down with an intensity she had never experienced back east, and she had to shield her eyes to look around the dusty settlement that would now be her home. Carlin was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of buildings clustered along the railroad tracks with the vast desert stretching endlessly in every direction. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing against the bright blue sky. Everything smelled of dust and sage and something wild she could not name. "Miss Florence Bennett." A deep voice made her turn. The man standing before her was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of the sky just before sunset. He wore working clothes, dusty from riding, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. When he removed the hat, she saw dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a face that was handsome in a rugged, weathered way that made her breath catch. "Yes, I am Florence," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Aaron Fletcher stood perfectly still for a long moment, just looking at her, and Florence felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. This was it, the moment when he would see how plain she was, how utterly unsuitable, and she would face the humiliation of being sent away. But instead of disappointment, something entirely unexpected crossed his face. His eyes widened slightly, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Madam, I have to tell you something honest right now before we go any further." Florence braced herself, her hands trembling. Here it came, the rejection. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my entire life." The words hit her like a physical force, and she actually stumbled backward, catching herself against her trunk. "What?" Aaron stepped closer, his eyes never leaving her face. "I mean it, Miss Bennett. I have been standing here trying to find the right words, but there are no right words. You are absolutely beautiful, and I cannot believe you agreed to come all this way for someone like me." "But I am not," Florence stammered, completely bewildered. "I am plain. Everyone has always said so. My sister told me just before I left that you would be disappointed, that I should not hope for too much, because I am too ordinary to catch anyone's eye." Aaron's jaw tightened, and something fierce entered his expression. "Then your sister is either blind or cruel, and I am guessing it is the latter." He took another step closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "Miss Bennett, Florence, If you will let me call you that, I want you to understand something right now. I do not know who made you believe such lies about yourself, but they were wrong. Dead wrong. Looking at you right now, standing here in the sunlight, I feel like the luckiest man in Nevada." Florence felt tears prick her eyes, and she blinked them back rapidly. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever looked at her the way Aaron was looking at her, like she was something precious and rare. "I do not understand," she whispered. "How can you say such things? You do not even know me." "I know what I see," Aaron said simply. "And what I see takes my breath away. Those eyes like warm honey in the sun, that face, so gentle and kind, the way you hold yourself with dignity and grace even though I can tell you are scared half to death right now." He smiled then, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "I wrote to you because I needed a wife to help run the ranch, someone practical and sensible. What I did not expect was to meet you and have my whole world tilt sideways." "You are saying things that cannot possibly be true," Florence said, but her heart was beating wildly and something long dormant inside her was beginning to wake. "They are true to me, and that is what matters." Aaron picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing. "Come on, let me show you the ranch. Then you can decide if you want to stay. I know I said in my letters that we would marry right away, but after seeing you after this, I want you to have time. Time to know me, to be sure. You deserve that much." They walked to a wagon hitched to two sturdy horses, and Aaron helped her up to the seat with a gentleness that surprised her. His hand was calloused and warm, and when their fingers touched, Florence felt a jolt of something electric. The ride out of town gave her time to study him without being obvious. Aaron sat beside her, handling the reins with easy competence, pointing out landmarks and telling her about Carlin. The town had sprung up with the railroad in 1868, just 11 years ago, and was still rough and growing. His ranch was about 5 miles outside of town, nestled up against the foothills where there was good grazing and a reliable creek. "I have been working the ranch for 6 years now," Aaron explained as they drove. "Built it up from nothing with my own 2 hands and a lot of stubbornness. I have about 200 head of cattle, some horses, chickens, a couple of milk cows. It is not fancy, but it is mine and it is a good life." "It sounds wonderful," Florence said honestly. She had spent her entire life in the city, and the vast openness of Nevada was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Can I ask you something?" Aaron glanced at her and she nodded. "Why did you agree to come out here? A woman like you could have had your pick of men back east." Florence actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You have a very mistaken impression of my situation, Mr. Fletcher. I did not have any prospects back east. After my parents died, I lived with my sister and her husband, and they made it very clear I was a burden. Margaret has always been the pretty one, the one who got attention and suitors. I was just the plain sister, useful for mending and cooking and keeping out of the way. When I saw your advertisement, it seemed like an escape, a chance for something different. What about friends? Other family?" "No other family. And friends?" Florence shook her head. "Margaret discouraged that. She said I embarrassed her, that I should stay home instead of being seen in public with her. I know it sounds pathetic." Aaron's hands tightened on the reins and his voice was low and angry when he spoke. "It does not sound pathetic. It sounds like you have been treated terribly by people who should have cared for you. But that is over now, Florence. You are here, and I promise you, I will never make you feel less than the remarkable woman you are." Florence did not know what to say to that, so she stayed quiet, watching the landscape roll by. The ranch appeared suddenly, a cluster of buildings in a green valley with the creek sparkling in the late afternoon light. There was a house, small but well built, with a covered porch and glass windows. Beyond it were a barn, a chicken coop, corrals, and various outbuildings. "It is beautiful," Florence breathed. Aaron beamed with pride. "It has taken a lot of work, but I love it. Come on, let me show you the house." The inside of the house was simple but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, a bedroom, and a small loft accessible by a ladder. The furniture was handmade but sturdy, and everything was neat and organized in a way that told her Aaron took care of what was his. "I know it is not much compared to what you are probably used to," Aaron said, setting her trunk down carefully. "It is perfect," Florence said, running her hand along the smooth wood of the table. "Truly, it is more than I expected. You have done well here." "There is a spare room in the barn that I have been using," Aaron said, somewhat awkwardly. "Figured you would want the house to yourself until you decide what you want to do. About us, I mean, about staying." Florence turned to look at him, this man who had called her beautiful, who had shown her more kindness in an hour than her own family had in years. "Mr. Fletcher, I want to be honest with you as well. I came here prepared to marry you immediately if that was what you wanted. I came here with very low expectations and a great deal of fear, but you have been nothing but kind and respectful. I think I would like to stay, at least for a while, to see if we suit each other. That is all I can ask for." Aaron smiled again, and Florence was struck by how that smile made her feel warm all through. "And please call me Aaron. Mr. Fletcher was my father, and he was a stern old cuss. I would much rather hear my name from you." Over the following days, Florence settled into life on the ranch with a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Aaron showed her everything, from how to feed the chickens to where he kept the supplies, explaining his routines and asking her opinion on household matters with a seriousness that made her feel valued. She woke early each morning to make breakfast, and Aaron would come in from his first round of chores with compliments for her cooking that made her blush. He never assumed she knew nothing just because she was from the city. Instead, he patiently taught her about ranch life, praising her when she learned quickly and encouraging her when she struggled. "You are a natural with the horses," he said on her fourth day there, watching as she successfully saddled the gentle mare he had assigned to her. "Better than some cowboys I have known." "I like them," Florence admitted, stroking the mare's soft nose. "They are honest. You know exactly where you stand with a horse." "Unlike people," Aaron said, and there was understanding in his voice. She found herself looking forward to meals together when they would sit at the table and talk. Aaron was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. He told her about growing up in Missouri, about coming west after his parents died in a cholera outbreak, about the hard years of establishing the ranch. "Why did you decide to advertise for a wife?" Florence asked one evening over supper. "Surely there are women in Carlin who would have been interested." Aaron was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Truth is, I have been so focused on building this place that I never took much time for socializing. And the few women in town, well, they were looking for someone different than me. Someone with more money or more sophistication or more charm. I am just a rancher, Florence. I work with my hands, I smell like horses half the time, and I am not good with fancy words or big gestures. I figured a mail-order arrangement would find me someone practical, someone who understood what this life entailed. And instead you got me," Florence said softly. "Someone who knows nothing about ranching and is afraid of her own shadow half the time. Hey." Aaron reached across the table and took her hand, and the touch sent warmth flooding through her. "You are not afraid. You are brave. Do you know how much courage it took to get on that train and come to a place you had never seen, to meet a man you did not know? You are one of the bravest people I have ever met, And as for knowing nothing about ranching, you are learning fast. You are smart and capable, and I am grateful every single day that you are here." Florence felt tears welling up again, the kind that came from happiness instead of pain. "You make me feel like a different person, Aaron, like someone worth something." "You are worth everything," he said fiercely. "And I am going to spend every day proving that to you until you believe it yourself." That night, lying in the comfortable bed in the ranch house, Florence realized she was falling in love with Aaron Fletcher. It terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. She had never expected this, never imagined that someone could look at her the way he did, like she was precious and beautiful and essential. The next morning brought trouble. Florence was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard horses approaching fast. Aaron came running from the barn, his face tight with concern. "Get in the house," he called to her, but before she could move, 3 riders came around the side of the barn. They were rough-looking men, armed and dusty from hard riding. The one in front had a cruel face with a scar running from his eye to his jaw. "Well, well, Fletcher," the scarred man said, his voice mocking. "Heard you got yourself a woman, wanted to come see for ourselves." "You need to leave, Crane," Aaron said, his voice hard. "You are not welcome here." "That is no way to talk to neighbors," Crane said, but his eyes were on Florence, looking her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "That is not much to look at, Fletcher. Figured you would do better than that, even as desperate as you are." Aaron moved faster than Florence would have thought possible, grabbing Crane's bridle and yanking the horse's head down. "You will apologize to the lady, or I will drag you off that horse and teach you some manners the hard way." Crane's hand moved toward his gun, and Florence felt her heart stop. But one of the other men spoke up quickly. "Come on, Crane, we are just here to talk business." "Business?" Aaron did not let go of the bridle. "I have no business with claim jumpers and thieves." "Big words from someone sitting on prime grazing land," Crane said. "Land that could be put to better use. We are prepared to make you an offer, Fletcher. A generous offer considering. I am not selling. Not to you, not to anyone. Now get off my land before I forget I am trying to be civilized." Crane stared at Aaron for a long, tense moment, then smiled slowly. "We will be back, Fletcher. And maybe next time we will bring more friends, have a longer conversation. Make sure you understand the situation properly." He wheeled his horse around, and the 3 men rode off, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Aaron stood rigid, watching until they were out of sight, then turned to Florence with worry written all over his face. "Are you all right?" "I am fine," Florence said, though she was shaking. "Who were they?" "Trouble," Aaron said grimly. "Cal Crane and his gang. They have been trying to push out the small ranchers, consolidate land for some big cattle operation. I have told them no a dozen times, but they keep coming back, getting more aggressive each time." "Is it dangerous?" Florence asked, though she already knew the answer. Aaron did not lie to her. "It could be. Crane is not above using force to get what he wants, but I am not going to be pushed off my own land, Florence. I built this place with my own sweat and blood, and I will be damned if I let someone like him take it from me." "What are we going to do?" The fact that she said "we" instead of "you" made Aaron's expression soften. "For now, we are going to be careful. I'm going to ride into town tomorrow, talk to the sheriff, make sure this is on record, and I am going to teach you how to shoot if you are willing, just in case." "I am willing," Florence said immediately. "I will do whatever it takes." That afternoon, Aaron set up targets behind the barn and brought out a rifle and a revolver. Florence had never held a gun in her life, and the weight of the revolver in her hand felt strange and dangerous. "It is just a tool," Aaron said gently, standing behind her to adjust her grip. "Like a hammer or a saw, just for a different purpose. The important thing is to respect it and know how to use it safely. He was patient, showing her how to load and unload, how to aim, how to squeeze the trigger gently instead of pulling. Florence flinched at the first shot, the noise and recoil startling her, but Aaron steadied her with his hands on her shoulders. Try again. You can do this. It took dozens of shots before she started to get the feel of it, and dozens more before she actually hit the target. But when she did, when the bottle on the fence post shattered, she felt a surge of accomplishment. "That is my girl," Aaron said proudly, and the casual endearment made Florence's heart skip. They practiced until the sun began to set, and Florence's arms ached from the unfamiliar exercise. But she felt stronger somehow, more capable. Aaron had not treated her like she was helpless or foolish. He had trusted her to learn, to be a partner instead of a burden. Over supper, Aaron was quieter than usual, clearly troubled by Crane's visit. Florence watched him push food around his plate and finally reached over to touch his hand. "Talk to me," she said softly. "Please." Aaron looked up, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest tighten. "I am scared, Florence. Not for me, but for you. When I placed that advertisement, when I asked someone to come out here and marry me, I did not think about putting anyone in danger. And now here you are, and there are men like Crane making threats, and I keep thinking I should put you back on that train, send you somewhere safe." "No," Florence said immediately, gripping his hand tighter. "Do not even think that, Aaron. I am not going anywhere. You could get hurt. They could come back, could do something terrible, and I would never forgive myself if anything happened to you because of me. Listen to me." Florence stood up and moved around the table to stand in front of him. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I matter. You make me feel seen and valued and beautiful, and I am not giving that up. I'm not giving you up. If there is danger, then we will face it together. But do not send me away. Please." Aaron stood too, and they were so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch infinitely gentle. "You are so much stronger than you think you are," he whispered. "Do you know that? You came out here alone, you have learned everything I have thrown at you, and now you are willing to stand and fight for a place you have only been at for a week. You are extraordinary, Florence Bennett." "I am only brave because of you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Because you make me want to be." "Florence," he breathed, and then he was kissing her, soft and sweet and perfect. Florence had been kissed before, once, by a boy at a church social who had done it on a dare and then laughed about how unpleasant it was. But this was nothing like that. This was Aaron, and it felt like coming home and catching fire all at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. Aaron rested his forehead against hers, his hand still cradling her face like she was something precious. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it is fast, I know it is crazy, but I love you, Florence. I think I started falling the moment I saw you on that platform, and every day since has just made it stronger." "I love you too," Florence whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "I never knew it could feel like this. I never knew I could feel like this." "Marry me," Aaron said. "Not because of an arrangement or an advertisement, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how beautiful and amazing you are. Marry me, Florence." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." They rode into Carlin the next morning, Aaron on his big gelding and Florence on her gentle mare, side by side in the bright Nevada sunshine. The town was busier than it had been when Florence arrived, with freight wagons being loaded and unloaded, miners heading to and from the surrounding claims, and cowboys lounging outside the saloons. Aaron helped Florence down from her horse outside the sheriff's office, his hands lingering on her waist in a way that made her blush. She was still getting used to being touched with affection, to being wanted. Sheriff Tom Morrison was a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened to Aaron's account of Crane's visit with a grim expression. "Crane has been causing problems for months now," Morrison said, leaning back in his chair. "But he is careful, always staying just on this side of the law. Making threats is not quite enough to arrest him on, especially when it is his word against yours." "So we are supposed to just wait until he does something worse?" Aaron asked, frustration clear in his voice. "I did not say that. I will have a talk with Crane, make it clear he is being watched, and I will increase patrols out your way when I can spare the men. But Aaron, you know as well as I do that the law only goes so far out here. You need to be ready to defend yourself and your property." "I am ready," Aaron said quietly, "but I have more than just myself to worry about now." Morrison's eyes shifted to Florence and he nodded slowly. "Heard you got yourself a bride. Congratulations. That makes things more complicated, I will grant you." "We would like to get married today, if possible," Aaron said, taking Florence's hand. "Is Judge Williams in town?" "He is, actually. Over at the hotel, I believe. But are you sure about this, son? Getting married in the middle of all this trouble with Crane?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," Aaron said, squeezing Florence's hand. They found Judge Williams in the hotel dining room, a portly man with kind eyes and a booming voice. He agreed to perform the ceremony that very afternoon and seemed genuinely pleased to do so. "We do not have much time to prepare," Florence said as they left the hotel, suddenly nervous. "I do not have a proper dress or anything special." "You do not need anything special," Aaron said, stopping in the middle of the dusty street to look at her. "You could wear a feed sack, and you would still be the most beautiful bride in Nevada. But if you want something new, there is a general store that has some ready-made dresses. We can look, if you would like." The general store was packed with everything from mining equipment to ladies' notions. The proprietor, a cheerful woman named Mrs. Harriet Coleman, took one look at Florence and Aaron's joined hands and clapped her own together with delight. "A wedding? How wonderful! Let me see what we have that might work." She pulled out several dresses, but it was a simple blue calico with white lace at the collar that caught Florence's eye. It was not fancy, but it was pretty and new, and when she tried it on behind a screen, it fit perfectly. "You look beautiful," Aaron said when she emerged, and the wonder in his voice made her believe it might actually be true. They also purchased supplies for the ranch, and Aaron insisted on buying Florence a few other things. A warm shawl, a new pair of gloves, a pretty hair comb made of carved wood. Each purchase felt like a declaration, a commitment to their future together. The wedding took place at 4 o'clock that afternoon in the small church at the edge of town. There were only a handful of witnesses: Sheriff Morrison, Judge Williams, Mrs. Coleman and her husband, and a young cowboy named Billy who worked part-time at the livery and had helped Aaron with the horses. Florence stood at the front of the church in her new blue dress, her hand in Aaron's, and listened to Judge Williams speak about love and commitment and partnership. When it was time for the vows, Aaron turned to face her fully, his eyes locked on hers. "I, Aaron Fletcher, take you, Florence Bennett, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice strong and clear. "I promise to love you, honor you, cherish you, and remind you every single day how beautiful and amazing you are. I promise to be your partner, your protector, and your best friend. I promise to build a life with you that is full of love and laughter and happiness. This I swear, for as long as I live." Florence's voice shook with emotion as she said her own vows, promising to love and honor Aaron, to stand by his side through whatever came, to be the wife and partner he deserved. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Aaron kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. The small congregation applauded, and Mrs. Coleman wiped tears from her eyes. "That was just beautiful," she declared. "You two are going to be very happy together, I can tell." They had a small celebration at the hotel restaurant, with cake and coffee, and Florence found herself laughing more than she had in years. These people, most of whom she had just met, were celebrating her happiness with genuine joy. It was so different from the cold disapproval she had always received from her sister. As the sun began to set, Aaron and Florence rode back to the ranch together, husband and wife now, their horses moving side by side through the gathering dusk. The ranch looked welcoming in the fading light, the windows glowing gold from the lamps Aaron had lit earlier. Inside the house, Aaron was suddenly shy, and Florence realized he was nervous. This strong, confident man who had built a ranch with his bare hands was anxious about their wedding night. "We do not have to rush anything," he said quietly. "I know this has all happened fast, and I want you to be comfortable. I want everything to be right for you." Florence stepped closer to him, reaching up to touch his face. "Aaron, I love you. I want to be your wife in every way. I am not scared, not with you. You are a miracle," he whispered, gathering her into his arms. "My beautiful miracle." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, Aaron treating her with such gentle reverence that Florence felt cherished and adored. Afterward, lying in his arms in the darkness, she felt a peace she had never known. This was where she belonged. This was home. The next few weeks passed in a haze of happiness. Florence threw herself into making the ranch house truly theirs, sewing curtains for the windows, planting a small garden near the porch, learning to cook the hearty meals Aaron needed after long days of hard work. Aaron taught her to ride better, to rope and brand cattle, to do all the tasks that ranch life required. They worked side by side during the day and fell into each other's arms at night, their love growing stronger with each passing hour. Aaron never stopped telling her she was beautiful, never stopped looking at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. And slowly, Florence began to believe it. She began to see herself through his eyes, and she liked what she saw. But the trouble with Crane had not gone away. They saw evidence of trespassing, found cut fences, discovered cattle with altered brands. Aaron reported each incident to Sheriff Morrison, but there was never enough proof to make arrests. "He is trying to wear me down," Aaron said one evening, staring at the latest damage. "Make me want to give up and sell out. Then we will not give him the satisfaction," Florence said firmly. "This is our home, Aaron. We are not going anywhere." One morning in late summer, Florence woke to find Aaron already dressed, his rifle across his lap as he sat in a chair by the window. "What is wrong?" she asked, instantly alert. "Riders coming," he said quietly. "A lot of them." Florence scrambled out of bed, throwing on her dress and grabbing the revolver Aaron had taught her to use. Her hands were shaking, but she loaded it with steady efficiency the way he had shown her. "I want you in the loft," Aaron said. "If things go bad, there is a window up there. You can get out, get to your horse, and ride for town." "I am not leaving you," Florence said. "Florence, please. I cannot fight and worry about you at the same time. Just get up in the loft, keep your gun ready, and if I tell you to run, you run. Promise me." The intensity in his eyes made her nod, though every fiber of her being rebelled against the idea of leaving him. She climbed quickly into the loft, positioning herself where she could see out the small window while still being hidden from below. The riders came into view, and Florence counted at least 8 men, all armed. Crane was in the lead, and his scarred face was twisted in an ugly smile. Aaron stepped out onto the porch, his rifle held casually but ready. "You are trespassing, Crane. Leave now, or I will consider this a hostile action." "Big words for one man alone," Crane called back. "Where is that plain little wife of yours, Fletcher?" "She run off already when she figured out what a dead-end life with you was going to be." Florence saw Aaron's jaw tighten, but his voice stayed calm. "My wife is none of your concern. State your business or get out." "My business is simple. You are going to sign over this land to the Nevada Cattle Company, and you are going to do it today. We have been patient, Fletcher, but our patience is at an end." "Then I guess we are at an impasse," Aaron said, "because I am not signing anything. This is my land, legally filed and paid for, and you have no right to it." Crane's smile faded. "I was hoping we could do this the easy way, but you are too stubborn for your own good. Boys, I think Mr. Fletcher needs a lesson in cooperation." The riders started to dismount, and Florence saw Aaron raise his rifle. But before anyone could move, a new voice rang out across the yard. "I would not do that if I were you, gentlemen." Sheriff Morrison rode into view, and he was not alone. He had at least a dozen men with him, all armed, all looking grim and determined. Florence recognized Billy from the livery and several other men from town. "This is none of your business, Morrison," Crane snarled. "When you threaten law-abiding citizens with armed force, it becomes my business," Morrison said calmly. "Now, you and your boys are going to turn around and ride out, or I am going to arrest the lot of you for attempted claim jumping and see how you like the territorial prison." "You cannot prove anything," Crane said, but he was looking nervous now, outnumbered and outgunned. "I've got a dozen witnesses right here who will testify to what they just heard," Morrison said. "And I've got affidavits from 5 other ranchers about your threats and intimidation tactics. The territorial judge is coming through next month, and he takes a dim view of this kind of behavior. So you have got a choice, Crane. You can leave Nevada and never come back, or you can sit in jail for the next few weeks and then stand trial. What is it going to be?" The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Florence held her breath, her finger resting on the trigger of her revolver, ready to fire if needed. Finally, Crane spat in the dust. "This is not over, Morrison. The Nevada Cattle Company has money and lawyers, and they are not going to let some two-bit sheriff stand in their way." "Maybe not," Morrison agreed. "But I will stand in the way as long as I am wearing this badge, and that is enough for today. Now get, before I change my mind about being lenient." Crane and his men rode off, and Florence sagged with relief. She climbed down from the loft and ran out to Aaron, who caught her in his arms and held her tight. "I thought," she gasped against his chest. "I thought they were going to hurt you. I thought I was going to lose you." "I am right here," he murmured into her hair. "Thanks to Tom and his quick thinking. How did you know?" This last was directed at the sheriff. Morrison dismounted, grinning. "Mrs. Coleman sent her son to fetch me this morning. Said she had a feeling something was going to happen today, and she wanted to make sure you folks had backup. Good thing, too, from the looks of things." "I owe you, Tom," Aaron said, shaking the sheriff's hand. "I owe all of you. Just doing our jobs," Morrison said, "and looking out for our own. You are part of this community now, Aaron. You and your bride both. We take care of each other out here." The posse stayed for coffee, and Florence served the last of the cookies she had baked the day before. The men were cheerful and friendly, treating Florence with respect and calling her Mrs. Fletcher in a way that made her feel proud and accepted. After everyone left, Aaron and Florence stood together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. "You think they will come back?" Florence asked. "Maybe," Aaron said honestly. "Men like Crane do not give up easy. But we have got friends now, Florence. We are not alone in this, and whatever comes, we will face it together." "Together," Florence agreed, leaning into his warmth. Over the following months, Crane and the Nevada Cattle Company made several more attempts to pressure Aaron into selling, using legal tactics and economic pressure instead of outright violence. But Aaron was stubborn, and with the support of Sheriff Morrison and the other ranchers, he fought back at every turn. Florence proved to be an invaluable partner. She learned the business side of ranching, keeping meticulous records and helping Aaron understand the legal documents that kept arriving. She also became a regular presence at the monthly Ranchers Association meetings, where she charmed the older men with her quiet intelligence and won the respect of their wives with her practical approach to problem-solving. "You are amazing," Aaron told her after one particularly contentious meeting where her calm presentation of the facts had swayed several undecided ranchers to their side. "I could not do any of this without you. We are partners," Florence said simply. "That is what marriage is supposed to be, is it not?" The seasons changed, summer giving way to fall and then winter. The first snowfall came in November, covering the ranch in a blanket of white that made Florence gasp with delight. She had seen snow in Philadelphia, of course, but there it had quickly turned to gray slush. Here, in the clear Nevada air, it sparkled like diamonds. Aaron took her out on horseback, riding through the snow-covered landscape, and they stopped on a ridge overlooking the valley. The view was breathtaking, miles of untouched wilderness stretching in every direction. "This is all ours," Aaron said, gesturing at the land below. "Everything we can see from here. We built this together, Florence, you and me." "I never imagined my life could be like this," Florence said, her voice thick with emotion. "When I got on that train in Philadelphia, I was just hoping for a place where I would not be in the way, where I would not be a burden. I never dreamed I would find love and purpose and a real home." "You were never a burden," Aaron said fiercely. "You were always meant for great things, you just needed someone to see it." "You saw it," Florence said, turning to look at him. "You saw me when no one else ever did." "I saw the truth," Aaron corrected. "I saw the most beautiful woman in the world, inside and out, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that you chose me." Christmas came, and Florence decorated the house with pine boughs and made a feast that filled the small space with wonderful smells. They invited Sheriff Morrison, Mrs. Coleman and her family, and several of the ranch hands Aaron had hired to help with winter chores. The house was crowded and noisy and perfect. "This is what a home should be," Aaron whispered to Florence as they watched their friends eating and laughing together. "Full of love and life. You did this. You made this." "We made this," Florence corrected, kissing his cheek. In January, Florence realized she had missed her monthly courses twice in a row. She said nothing at first, afraid to hope, but when a third month passed and she began to feel sick in the mornings, she could no longer deny the possibility. She rode into town alone one afternoon, telling Aaron she needed supplies and went to see Dr. Sarah Foster, the only female doctor in Carlin. Dr. Foster had come west from Boston 5 years earlier, determined to serve the frontier communities that desperately needed medical care. The examination was brief, and Dr. Foster's smile was warm when she delivered the news. "Congratulations, Mrs. Fletcher. You are going to have a baby. I would estimate you are about 3 months along, which means you should deliver sometime in late summer." Florence felt joy and terror in equal measure. "I do not know anything about being a mother," she admitted. "What if I am not good at it? What if something goes wrong?" "Every new mother feels that way," Dr. Foster assured her. "But you have good instincts and you have a husband who clearly adores you. You will figure it out together, just like you have figured out everything else." That evening, Florence made Aaron's favorite dinner and waited until they were sitting together on the porch in the cool dusk. She was nervous, unsure how he would react to the news. "Aaron, I need to tell you something," she began, and he immediately turned to her with concern. "What is wrong? Are you ill?" "No, not ill. Just, well, I went to see Dr. Foster today." Aaron's face went pale. "Florence, what is it? What did she say?" "She said we are going to have a baby in late summer, probably August." The silence stretched out for what felt like an eternity, and Florence started to worry. But then Aaron let out a whoop of joy that startled the horses in the corral and swept her up into his arms, spinning her around. "A baby! We are going to have a baby! Florence, this is the best news, the most wonderful news." He set her down carefully, suddenly anxious. "But are you all right? Should you be doing all the work you have been doing? Do we need to hire more help? What did the doctor say?" "The doctor said I am healthy and strong, and that I can continue my normal activities as long as I feel up to it," Florence said, laughing at his sudden protective concern. "Aaron, I am pregnant, not made of glass." I know, but you are carrying our child, Florence. That makes you even more precious than you already were, if that is even possible. I am going to take such good care of you, both of you." He knelt down in front of her and placed his hands gently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your pa. I just want you to know that you are already so loved, and we cannot wait to meet you. And your mama is the most amazing woman in the world, and I promise we are going to give you a wonderful life." Florence felt tears streaming down her face as she ran her fingers through Aaron's hair. This moment right here was perfect. Everything she had never known she wanted, everything she had been told she did not deserve, was right here in her grasp. The months of pregnancy passed in a blur of preparations. Aaron built a cradle from smooth pine, sanding it until it was soft as silk. Florence sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart swelling each time she held up the miniature garments. The women from town threw her a party, showering her with gifts and advice, and Florence realized she had found not just a husband but a whole community. The trouble with Crane and the cattle company faded into the background. Apparently, Sheriff Morrison had made good on his threats, and several of Crane's associates had been arrested on various charges. The company itself seemed to have moved its attention to other territories, leaving the Carlin ranchers in peace. "Maybe it is finally over," Florence said one evening in early August, her hands resting on her swollen belly. The baby was active tonight, kicking and rolling in a way that was both uncomfortable and wondrous. "Maybe," Aaron agreed. He put his own hand next to hers, his face lighting up when he felt the baby move. "Or maybe they are just biding their time, but either way we will be ready. We have got each other, and we have got this little one coming, and we have got a whole town full of people who have our backs." Florence went into labor on a hot August afternoon, 3 weeks before Dr. Foster had predicted. Aaron had been out checking the cattle and came back to find Florence gripping the kitchen table, her face pale and drawn. "It is time," she gasped, and Aaron went white as a sheet. "But it is too early. Dr. Foster said late August. This is only the beginning of August. Is something wrong?" "Is the baby okay?" "The baby is coming when the baby wants to come," Florence said, trying to sound calm even though she was terrified. "We need to get Dr. Foster." Aaron ran for his horse, rode to town faster than he had ever ridden in his life, and came back with Dr. Foster in her buggy. The doctor took one look at Florence and nodded approvingly. "Everything looks normal. Babies come when they are ready, and this one is clearly ready. Let us get you into bed, Florence, and we will bring this little person into the world." The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Aaron stayed by Florence's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement and love. When the pain got too intense, when Florence was sure she could not bear another moment, she would look into his eyes and find the strength to continue. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day with one last tremendous effort, Florence brought their child into the world. The baby's cry filled the room, strong and healthy, and Dr. Foster laughed with delight. "You have a son, a beautiful, healthy baby boy." Aaron was crying openly as Dr. Foster placed the baby in Florence's arms. He was red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny, waving fists. "He is beautiful," Florence whispered, exhausted but elated. "Aaron, look at him. We made him. We made this perfect little person." "He has your eyes," Aaron said, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "And your chin. He is going to be smart and brave and kind, just like his mother." "What should we name him?" Florence asked. They had discussed names for months but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Aaron smiled. "What about Andrew? Andrew Fletcher. It means strong and manly, and I think it suits him." "Andrew Fletcher," Florence repeated, looking down at her son. "Welcome to the world, Andrew. We have been waiting for you, Doctor." Foster stayed overnight to make sure both mother and baby were doing well, and by the next morning she pronounced them healthy and thriving. Word spread quickly through Carlin, and over the next few days they had a steady stream of visitors bringing gifts and congratulations. Mrs. Coleman came with a basket full of baby clothes she had sewn herself. Sheriff Morrison brought a carved wooden horse. Billy, the stable hand, showed up with a stuffed rabbit he had clearly bought with his limited wages, looking embarrassed and pleased when Florence thanked him profusely. "You have got a whole community here who loves you," Dr. Foster told Florence before she left. "That baby is going to grow up surrounded by good people who care about him. That is a precious gift." The first months of Andrew's life were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Florence was constantly tired, learning to feed and change and soothe the baby who seemed to have endless needs. But Aaron was an involved father from the start, walking the floor with Andrew when he cried at night, changing diapers without complaint, singing silly songs that made both Florence and the baby smile. "I never knew I could love something this much," Aaron said one night, holding Andrew against his chest while the baby slept. "When I look at him, when I look at you, I feel like my heart is going to explode." "I know what you mean," Florence said softly. "Sometimes I look at our life and I cannot believe it is real, that I get to have you and Andrew and this home. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Aaron assured her, "and it is forever. You are stuck with me, Florence Fletcher, for the rest of our lives." "That sounds perfect," Florence said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As Andrew grew, the ranch prospered. Aaron hired on more help, expanded the herd, bought more land. Florence managed the household and the books, proving to have a natural talent for business that surprised even her. Together, they built something substantial and lasting. Andrew's first word was "Pa," which made Aaron puff up with pride for days. His first steps were taken across the kitchen floor, from Florence's arms to Aaron's, and they both cried at the milestone. He was a happy baby, quick to smile and laugh, curious about everything around him. On Andrew's first birthday, they threw a party that brought together everyone who had helped them over the past year. The house was full of people and noise and celebration, and Florence stood in the middle of it all with Andrew on her hip, looking around with wonder. "What are you thinking?" Aaron asked, coming up beside her. "I am thinking about the day I arrived here," Florence said. "How scared I was, how sure I was that I was making a mistake. And I am thinking about how wrong I was. Coming here was the best decision I ever made. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me," Aaron said, putting his arm around her shoulders. "You took a lonely rancher and gave him a family, a home, a reason to smile every single day. You are the most beautiful woman alive, Florence, and I will never stop telling you that." "I believe you now," Florence said, and it was true. She had finally internalized what Aaron had seen from the very beginning, that beauty was not about symmetrical features or fashionable clothes. It was about kindness and strength and love, and by those measures, she was beautiful indeed. 2 years after Andrew was born, Florence gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Alice. She had Florence's brown hair and Aaron's blue eyes, and she was as strong-willed as her brother was easy-going. The family of 4 filled the ranch house with laughter and chaos, and so much love, it seemed to spill out into the very air. Aaron added rooms to the house to accommodate their growing family. A proper nursery, a larger bedroom for the parents, a dining room that could hold their friends and family for the frequent gatherings they now hosted. The ranch was no longer just a place of business but a true home, the heart of a community. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Aaron took Florence back to the ridge where they had stood in the snow that first winter. The children were with Mrs. Coleman for the afternoon, giving them a rare moment alone together. "5 years ago, I stood on that train platform and saw you for the first time," Aaron said, holding Florence close. "And I knew, right in that moment, that my life had just changed forever. I had asked for a practical wife, a helper, and instead I got you. My best friend, my partner, the love of my life. I was so scared that day," Florence admitted. "I thought you would take one look at me and be disappointed. I had been told so many times that I was plain and ordinary, that no one would ever truly want me." "Then everyone who told you that was a fool," Aaron said firmly. "You are extraordinary, Florence. You are brilliant and strong and beautiful, and raising our children with you, building this life with you, has been the greatest joy of my life." "I love you," Florence said simply. "More than words can say. You gave me everything I never knew I needed. You made me see myself differently, made me believe I was worth something." "You were always worth everything," Aaron said. "I just helped you see the truth." They stood together watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The ranch spread out below them, their children safe and happy with friends in town, their future bright and full of promise. "You ever regret it?" Florence asked. "Placing that advertisement? Taking a chance on a stranger?" "Never," Aaron said without hesitation. "Not for a single second. You are the most beautiful woman alive, Florence, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Even the trouble with Crane, even the hard times, especially the hard times," Aaron said. "Because those showed me what we could handle together, and we can handle anything, as long as we are together." The years continued to pass in a blur of happy moments. Andrew grew into a serious, studious boy who loved books and horses in equal measure. Alice was wild and fearless, climbing trees and racing her pony and keeping her parents on their toes. When Andrew was 6 and Alice was 4, Florence gave birth to another son, Benjamin, who had his father's easy smile and his mother's gentle nature. The ranch continued to thrive, becoming one of the most successful in the region. Aaron and Florence were respected members of the community, known for their fairness and generosity. They helped neighbors in need, mentored young ranchers just starting out, and opened their home to anyone who needed a meal or a place to stay. Florence sometimes got letters from Philadelphia, stiff, formal notes from her sister Margaret that were clearly written out of obligation rather than affection. Margaret's life had not turned out as well as she had hoped. Her husband's business had failed, and they were struggling financially. There were hints in the letters that they might need assistance, and Florence discussed it with Aaron one evening. "She was cruel to you," Aaron said. "She made you feel worthless. You would be justified in ignoring her completely." "I know," Florence said. But I am not the same person I was back then, Aaron. I am stronger now, more sure of myself. And I think I would feel guilty if I did not at least offer to help, especially if they are truly desperate. Then we will help, Aaron said simply. Because that is who you are, Florence. You are kind and compassionate, even to people who do not deserve it. It is one of the things I love most about you. They sent money to Margaret, enough to help but not so much that it would cripple their own finances. The thank you note they received in return was grudging at best, but Florence felt at peace with her decision. I am not doing it for her gratitude, she explained to Aaron. I am doing it because it is the right thing to do, and because I can afford to be generous now. I have so much, Aaron. So much more than I ever dreamed of having. Sharing a little of that does not diminish what we have. Andrew grew into a young man who was the spitting image of his father, tall and strong with the same intense blue eyes. He had his mother's intelligence and his father's work ethic, and he loved the ranch with a passion that made Aaron's eyes shine with pride. He is going to take over someday, Aaron said, watching Andrew work with the cattle with the ease of someone born to it. He's going to make this place even better than we ever could. He is a good boy, Florence agreed. They all are. We have been so blessed, Aaron. Alice surprised everyone by developing a talent for drawing and painting. She would spend hours sketching the landscape, the animals, the people around her, and her work showed a genuine gift. Florence encouraged it, even though it was unusual for a rancher's daughter to have artistic ambitions. Let her explore it, Florence said when Aaron worried about practicality. Who knows what she might do? The world is changing, Aaron. There is room now for women to do things beyond just being wives and mothers, as wonderful as that is. Benjamin was the baby of the family, spoiled and adored by his older siblings. He had a gentleness about him that reminded Florence of herself, a sensitivity to the feelings of others that would serve him well in life. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Aaron surprised Florence with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with the Colemans and took the train west, spending a week in the bustling city by the bay. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate at fancy restaurants, and walked along the waterfront hand in hand. This is wonderful, Florence said, watching the ships in the harbor. But I miss the ranch, I miss our children, I miss home. Me too, Aaron admitted. As nice as this is, there is no place I would rather be than our ranch with our family around us. But I wanted you to have this, Florence. I wanted you to see something of the world, to have experiences beyond just work and responsibilities. I appreciate it, Florence said, squeezing his hand. And I am enjoying it, but the best part is being here with you. We could be anywhere, Aaron, and I would be happy as long as we were together. They returned home to a joyous reunion with their children, and Florence felt her heart swell with contentment as Andrew, Alice, and Benjamin all clamored for hugs and stories about the trip. This is everything, she whispered to Aaron that night as they lay in their own bed after a week away. This life we have built, this family we have made, this is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed I could have. You deserve it all, Aaron said, pulling her close. Every bit of happiness, every moment of joy. You deserve it because of who you are, Florence, beautiful inside and out. More years passed, and the children continued to grow. Andrew fell in love with a sweet girl from town named Emma, and their wedding was the event of the season, with half of Carlin in attendance. Aaron cried openly as he watched his son get married, and Florence held his hand tightly, understanding the bittersweet nature of watching your children become adults. Alice went off to art school in San Francisco, a bold move that had some of the more traditional townspeople clucking their tongues. But Florence and Aaron supported her completely. knowing their daughter needed to explore her talents and find her own path. Benjamin showed an interest in ranching, but also in the emerging science of veterinary medicine. He would likely split his time between both, and that was fine with Aaron, who had never believed in forcing his children into predetermined roles. When Aaron and Florence had been married for 15 years, they found themselves alone in the house for the first time since Andrew had been born. All three children were off on their own adventures, and the quiet was both peaceful and a little unsettling. "It is strange, is it not?" Florence said one evening. "We spent so many years wishing for just a moment of peace and quiet, and now that we have it, I miss the noise." "I know what you mean," Aaron agreed, "but they will be back. Andrew and Emma are building a house just over the ridge, so they will be close. Alice will come home between school terms. Benjamin will be back from his studies in the spring. And in the meantime, we have each other, just like we did at the beginning." "Just like at the beginning," Florence repeated, smiling. "Except now we are older and grayer, and surrounded by proof of the life we have built together." "You are still the most beautiful woman alive," Aaron said, and he meant it just as much as he had the day they met. "Time has not changed that, Florence. If anything, you are more beautiful now than you were then. I look at you and I see everything we have been through together, all the challenges we have faced, all the joy we have shared. I see the mother of my children, the partner who helped me build all of this, the love of my life. That is beauty that goes far beyond what any mirror could show." Florence felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind of tears that came from being deeply, truly loved. "I love you, Aaron Fletcher. I loved you the day you called me beautiful when everyone else called me plain. I loved you when you defended our home against threats. I loved you when you held our children for the first time. I love you now, and I will love you for whatever time we have left." "That is going to be a long time," Aaron said, "because I intend to grow very old with you, Florence. I want to be ancient together, sitting on that porch in rocking chairs, watching our grandchildren run around the yard." And that was exactly what happened. Andrew and Emma had 4 children of their own, and they were frequent visitors to the ranch, bringing energy and laughter back into the house. Alice married a fellow artist and split her time between San Francisco and Carlin, bringing her husband and eventually her 2 daughters to visit regularly. Benjamin became a veterinarian and married a quiet, studious woman who shared his love of animals, and their 3 sons kept them busy and happy. Florence and Aaron did indeed grow old together, watching their family expand and thrive. The ranch continued to prosper, passed down to Andrew but still overseen by Aaron for as long as he was able. They added that porch with rocking chairs, and many evenings found them sitting there together, hands linked, watching the sun set over the land they had made their own. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. Children and grandchildren filled every corner of the expanded house, and the yard was full of tables laden with food and people laughing and talking. Florence stood on the porch, looking out at the scene, and felt Aaron's arms come around her from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice deeper with age but still warm and loving. "I am thinking about that scared girl who stepped off the train in Carlin 40 years ago," Florence said. "How sure she was that she was plain and unworthy of love, and I am thinking about how wrong she was, how one man saw the truth and changed her entire life." "I did not change your life," Aaron corrected gently. "I just helped you see what was already there. You changed your own life, Florence. You took a chance, you were brave. You built all of this with your own 2 hands as much as I did." "We did it together," Florence said, turning in his arms to face him. They were both white-haired now, their faces lined with age, but when she looked into his eyes, she still saw the young rancher who had taken her breath away. Together, Aaron agreed. Always together. From that first moment on the platform to this very second, it has always been us. Partners, lovers, best friends. You are still the most beautiful woman alive, Florence, and I will love you until my last breath. And I will love you beyond that, Florence said, reaching up to touch his weathered face. Into whatever comes next, I will love you. They kissed, surrounded by the family they had created, the legacy they had built, and it was perfect. Not because everything had always been easy, but because they had faced it all together and come out stronger on the other side. As the sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Florence and Aaron stood together on their porch, surrounded by love and laughter and the evidence of a life well lived. The mail-order bride who had been told she was too plain, too ordinary, too unremarkable had found the man who saw her truth. And together, they had created something beautiful that would last for generations. Years later, when Florence was 85 and Aaron 87, they passed away within hours of each other, neither able to bear being apart even in death. They were buried side by side on the ridge overlooking the ranch, with a simple headstone that read, Aaron and Florence Fletcher. Together always. Love eternal. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to mourn and to celebrate, sharing stories of the remarkable couple who had built an empire of love from nothing more than a leap of faith and a moment of recognition on a train platform. Andrew stood before the assembled family and raised a glass. To my parents, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who taught us that real beauty comes from within, that love is stronger than any challenge, and that family is everything. They built this place with their bare hands and their determination, but more than that, they built a legacy of love that will last forever. To Aaron and Florence Fletcher. To Aaron and Florence, the family chorused, and the words echoed across the land they had loved, the home they had made, the future they had created. And if you listened very carefully on quiet evenings, some said you could still hear them on that porch, Aaron telling Florence she was the most beautiful woman alive, and Florence believing him, finally and completely, after a lifetime of being shown it was true. The ranch continued to thrive through the generations, each new Fletcher adding their own chapter to the story, while honoring the foundation that Aaron and Florence had laid. The house was expanded and modernized over the years, but the original rooms were preserved exactly as they had been, a museum to the love story that had started it all. The wooden comb Aaron had bought Florence on their wedding day was passed down through the family, given to each Fletcher bride on her wedding day, with the story of the mail-order bride who was told she was plain and the cowboy who knew better. It became a symbol of seeing beyond surface appearances, of recognizing true worth, of believing in love even when the world says it is impossible. And every single Fletcher child, grandchild, and great-grandchild grew up knowing the story of how it all began, with a lonely rancher placing an advertisement, a desperate woman taking a chance, and a moment of recognition that changed everything. They learned that real beauty had nothing to do with what others saw, and everything to do with who you truly were inside. They learned that love could conquer fear, that partnership could overcome any obstacle, and that a life built on truth and respect and genuine affection was the greatest treasure anyone could hope to have. The ranch itself became something of a legend in Carlin and beyond, not because it was the biggest or the richest, but because everyone who visited could feel the love that had gone into building it. It was in the careful construction of the house, in the well-tended land, in the way the family still gathered there for every important occasion, drawn back to the place where it all began. Florence's garden, which she had planted in those early days and tended until she physically could not anymore, was maintained by successive generations of Fletchers. The roses she had loved still bloomed every summer, and the vegetable plot still produced abundant harvests. It was said that if you stood in that garden in the early morning light, you could almost see Florence there, her hands in the soil, a smile on her face as she worked to make the ranch feel like home. Aaron's workshop, where he had built that first cradle for Andrew and countless other pieces of furniture over the years, was also preserved. His tools hung on the walls, and the workbench still bore the marks of his labor. Benjamin's grandson, who shared Aaron's name, still used that workshop, making furniture with the same care and craftsmanship his great-grandfather had shown. The story of Aaron and Florence became more than just family history. It became a part of Carlin's identity. The town had grown over the years, no longer the rough railroad stop it had been in 1879, but it retained its sense of community and its pride in its history. The Fletcher Ranch was a touchstone, a reminder of the values that had built the town: hard work, loyalty, standing up for what was right, and above all, seeing the worth in every person. Every year on the anniversary of Aaron and Florence's wedding, the family held a gathering at the ranch. It started small, just their children and grandchildren, but over the years it grew to include extended family, old friends, and even people from town who had been touched by the family's generosity and kindness. It became known as the Fletcher Reunion, and it was one of the highlights of Carlin's social calendar. At these reunions, the oldest members of the family would tell the story again, keeping it alive for the youngest generation. They would talk about Florence stepping off that train, scared and uncertain. They would talk about Aaron seeing her and being struck dumb by her beauty when everyone else had called her plain. They would talk about the challenges they had faced and overcome together, and about the love that had sustained them through it all. And at the end of the story, someone would always raise a glass and offer the toast that had become a Fletcher family tradition: to seeing truly, to loving deeply, and to building a life worth living. To Aaron and Florence, together always. The response, chorused by dozens of voices young and old, was always the same: together always. In this way, the love story that began on a dusty platform in Carlin, Nevada, in the summer of 1879, lived on, inspiring generation after generation to look beyond surface appearances, to take chances on love, and to build their lives on a foundation of truth and respect and genuine affection. Aaron and Florence's legacy was not just the successful ranch or the numerous descendants, though those were significant. Their real legacy was the example they had set, showing that one moment of recognition, one choice to see and speak the truth, could change everything. Florence had been told she was plain, ordinary, unremarkable. But Aaron had seen the truth. She was beautiful, extraordinary, and absolutely remarkable. And in believing him, in letting herself be loved, Florence had become everything she was always meant to be. Together, they had created something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes, a testament to the transformative power of love and the importance of seeing each person's true worth. The ranch still stands today, run by the 6th generation of Fletchers, and the story still gets told. Because some love stories are too powerful to be forgotten, too important to be lost to time. The mail-order bride who was told she was plain and the cowboy who knew better had found each other across the miles and the years, and their love had created ripples that spread outward, touching countless lives and changing the world in small but significant ways. And that, in the end, was the greatest beauty of all. Not in a face or a figure, but in a life lived with love, in a legacy that endured, in a story that would be told and retold as long as there were Fletchers to tell it and people to listen. Together always, just as they had promised each other on that porch so many years ago. Together in life, together in death, together in memory, together forever.